And welcome back. Here we'll take a first look at Project Dogwaffle Howler, the demo version which we just installed in the prior video. So this time I'll just double click, or perhaps let's have a quick right click on that and select properties, because there's something you might want to take a look at. In the properties of this program, you might go and look under compatibility, right? I actually have it currently set to run this program in compatibility mode for Windows XP Service Pack 2, and that's because I had chosen that option at the very end of the installation. It chose that. That may not necessarily be needed anymore, so you could uncheck that. But what you definitely would want to do is run this program as administrator. Now again, that may not be needed if you lower all your defenses, if you disable UAC and you have just really no need for it. And that's really your call, as to how much you want to make it simpler and easier for this and other programs to go and do what they need to do so that they can work just the best way possible. So that's just a quick discussion of some of the features you'll want to look. It's under the compatibility tab, and it's always a good idea to become familiar with some of the features there. You might not see some of these of value, especially if you are on a 32-bit version and particularly on Windows XP. But if you're on Windows 7 and perhaps a 64-bit version or on Windows Vista, you might want to experiment with some of these options in case the normal behavior in the default configuration doesn't give you the good behavior, and the program doesn't work the best possible way. There's of course a couple of other presets or prerequisites. You can see them on our website at thebest3d.com, and essentially you might, depending on which features you're using, you might need some of the .NET Framework 4. Most of the time people have that already installed on their system nowadays. But if you should not have that yet, and you notice some particular plugins or filters are not working right, maybe what you need to do is add the .NET Framework 4 on your system, and we have links to download that from the Microsoft website as well. Alright, all that said, let's go keep it in this configuration and start. So I'll double click this program now, and I know it will start in administrator mode. Again, this is the demo version, and as we mentioned here, you're allowed 30 saves in this demo, and you have 30 left in this case, so I haven't saved anything yet, right? So you're given the opportunity here. I'll grab it and resize it so it covers my entire capture area, but just about only that. Alright, so let's see. Let's dive in. Maybe the way that you will have it initially by default might be a little bit different. You might have, for instance, the layout of the tool. This toolbar here, this tools window is a floating bar. You can have it in two-column toolbar like I have it right now, or single column, and that's probably the way it will be by default. Again, your mileage may vary. You may also have different color settings, so there's interface colors you can choose. And I would recommend you also become familiar with the settings that allows you to increase the memory options here. Let's make it the maximum, 256 megs. It's not a whole lot of memory, but it's certainly significant when you need it to have a couple of levels of undo, especially on very large images. You'll use up that memory in a heartbeat. Quick check also to see how many threads you have, how many cores essentially on your system. If you have a Core 2 Duo, or like a dual core, quad core, 6 core, 8 core, and so on, you should be able to get some information here to confirm that what you think is in your PC is indeed available there. And then you can also indicate what the default size is for your image that gets created when you start the program initially. Now I'm going to make it a little bit smaller here so it fits in this screen capture that I'm doing at 1280 by 720, I believe. So I'll make it a little bit less there. I'll make it 700 or 680, and I'll keep it at about, let's make it 960 there. Alright, so that will be the default size, and next time I'll start, or if I go and start the program from here, it might still go full screen. So for this particular capture here, I'll need to make sure that I'll reposition it on my capture area. There you go. And I have my window. I can zoom in and out with my scroll bar on the mouse, and I can always reset the zoom to 100. There it is, 100%, right? So that's the default size, every pixel to himself, and I can start zooming and painting with my left button here. I can paint with the right button too, and that's actually erasing. It's not really erasing. What it's doing, it's painting to the background color. So there are essentially two colors. You can see them right there. There's a black and there's a white color. So one is called the primary color. That's the one that's attached to your left mouse. If you use a pen, like a digital graphic drawing pen, there are some that cost only about $12, and they go up to a couple of $100. It depends on the brand, the size, the features, and so on. If you use the left button, you can set it here. You can change the color with the left button, and then that way you can paint with that color. You can use the right button to choose a different color, and that will set your alternate color. Right, so that's your secondary color. And now I'm not really erasing anymore. I'm just drawing or painting to that alternate color. So if I wanted to erase everything, there's a couple of ways to do that. On the toolbar at the bottom, you have a little X, and that will erase everything. To what color? Well, let's try it. Oh, it looks like it's erasing to the secondary color. Alright, so you can do that. You can choose a different color with the left button and a different color with the right button. And then if you use that different color, you can erase, for instance, to it. You can also erase with the right click on that. You can erase to other. You can erase the current selection, which by default is entire image. You can erase it to the primary color, right? And that's yellow in my case right now. So if I set it to red because I want to erase it to red, or if I pick some of the colors here like pink or this purple, then I can right click on that and erase to the primary color, and there we go. Alright, and then I can draw with the right button. Now what if I wanted to switch the two? What if the primary color is not what I want to keep? I want to use the left button to paint with the primary color, with this what is currently in the secondary color. I can actually switch the two, and there's a couple of ways to do that. You can see on the toolbar there's a little switcheroo icon here, the two arrows, right? And when you click that, it switches the two. Let me click again, and you see them switch back and forth. And while I'm doing that, keep your eye on the right side too, where the primary and secondary colors are switching there as well. Alright, another way to do that is to just click, drag, and drop it. You can click this one, you can drag it around and do a switcheroo between the two. And then click this one back and drag it over. So you can drag and drop colors between the primary, secondary colors, but also between these in the color swatch. So for instance, if you'll have this yellow one here, when you click it, it will switch. It will grab this. You can grab this color here, for instance, the secondary, bring it over to the pink, and then the pink will take the place up there when I drop it. So I'm going to drop it right there, and the pink took the place here, and the dropped light green color I had here was saved in this. Let's do that one more time. I'm going to grab the pink and store it where the blue is, and the blue color, when I drop it, the blue color comes in as the secondary color. I can erase to that. That's already been seen before. Let's go paint now. Let's use different brushes. Alright, let's go take a look at some of the brushes, because by default I have some sort of a airbrush, and I have some main parameters here, like the size of it. I can make it smaller, opacity, I can make it more translucent, and I have also fully opaque, and I can also do the step distance a little bit differently here. So I can bring it down to a very small, very narrow step, or I can make it a very bright step, let's say 69. So you can see every single dab of paint that's being stamped down along my path as I'm painting here. Alright, so that's how you can work with the current settings. In fact, here are the settings for your brush. You click on that and you can pin it down so it stays, and you can see all sorts of parameters. We've seen some of them here, the size, opacity, steps. Same here, size, opacity, steps. So these are the same parameters that you see up there, but there's many more. There's the mode with a couple of different ways as the paint is going in. Are you multiplying it to the existing paint? Are you subtracting it, adding, and so on? So there's different modes that you can use. You see them here too. And then of course there's a variety of other parameters, like the random position. Right, for instance, if you give it some random positioning on these, instead of going along the perfect path that you drew here, if you look at that, it's now kind of off that perfect path. Right? If you set the random position back to 0 and perhaps use a different color like pink or so, now if you have the keyboard focus still in the application, what you can do is Shift A, hit the Shift and A, and that will repaint along that same most recent path. Right, and then now you can see it doesn't have the random position anymore. So if you give it random size and do Shift A, it's a little bit difficult to see here because we have already done that along that path. Let's do Shift A. There you go. Now you see random sizes, right? Some of those dabs are a little bit bigger, some of them are smaller. Let's zoom in a little bit here and get a look at that. Yeah, you can see that there is some random sizing going on here. Well, you can have the size changed based on other things than randomness. You can have it based on speed. So instead of random, you could have speed scale. And you could have it go bigger or smaller depending on which way you set this value. So the 0 position here, the default is in the middle, and you would want to say perhaps let's go this way and see what happens. So when you go slowly, it's pretty big, and when you go faster, you can see that it's making it very small. And so that's one way that you can mimic effects like a drippy pen, right? A pen that's loaded with ink, and as you slow down, it gets more time to have the ink go and flood the paper, and it soaks it up. The paper will soak up the ink. But if you go quickly, it doesn't have the chance to do that, and so it will end up making a very thin line. Now we have presets for all of these. You don't have to go and remember all these parameters and go back to them every time you want to switch from one to another brush. So when you look at this brush tool that's enabled initially by default, or if you look at this menu here, you can see here when you click this menu, from this tool menu, you'll see a lot of presets. You can also see that in the toolbar, right click on this brush tool, and then you'll see the same menu. So there are simple brushes, there are airbrushes. This one here, the large airbrush, is the one that's enabled by default. Click that and it'll be back to that default appearance. Right click and select a different one though, for instance the drippy pen. Right, and now you have a brush that's going to and perhaps appear better if it is on white background. So I'll right click here and select clear selected to white. Alright, so here we have a drippy pen that if I'm going fast or slow, it's giving you a slightly different appearance. This is very small now though, so I might want to increase the size to a little bit bigger. So now you see it's doing all sorts of weird stuff depending on how fast I'm moving. If I'm going slow, if I'm going fast. It also shows a little bit of a paper texture showing through here, some rough paper underneath it. Let's see what other brushes we have here. This is really where you just want to start exploring, right, and remembering where the large pencil is and where the oils are. Let's take a look at the large cover. This is typically one way that you might initially put a large pen or a large brush to use in order to provide the cover, or for instance a nature painting. Let's say you're going with some bluish colors at the top for something like the sky, and then you have some landscapes, some nature paint and nature scenes that will go here, and then perhaps a little bit more greenish forests in the and perhaps grass and so on in the foreground. Right, so that gives you a quick way to very nicely and superficially paint the main tone of your scene. And then of course you'll start using other brushes and finer brushes, but maybe still in the oils category. There's a lot of fun ones here. Totally oil. Look at that. This will kind of totally blend it and smear it as if it's still wet. And then of course this is where we just start. I mean, we have brushes. This program is very brush centric, right? So you have a lot of different presets of brushes. Those are most of these we call internal brushes. But even the brush settings here, you have more categories. You have in fact here 3 different main categories of brushes. So there is a internal algorithmic pen and this anti-alias. So that one's good for everyday drawing. You can change the size, opacity, steps and all of that. Then there is the custom brush, and in the custom brush, that's this one here. We don't have a custom brush selected yet, but you have tools to make them. So you can make, for instance, if I undo this here and I say I want this portion right here in my image, I want a portion of that to be used as a brush image, I can make my own. And there's a tool here, the custom brush selector tool. can also use Control P, I think, or Control B for that. So essentially that allows you to kind of shoot it and say, I want this section to be selected as the custom image. You can also use a preview of that that's attached to your brush. As you're moving it around, you now see exactly where it's going to go. So you can paint with that, you can stamp it down where you need it, and so on. So there's lots of uses for that. You can make custom brushes in many other ways. This one here in the custom tab section of the brush settings allows you to make a more soft brush. And then you can also add a variety of other things to it. You can change the bias, and you can use all sorts of other techniques here to add some cells. Where is it? Cell density, there it is. And then so that way you get something quite different. In fact, if you do a simple click down here, stamp it down like that, maybe at full opacity, you'll see that it adds, and I have also some paper texture enabled here in this, and that's probably because of some of the other brushes I chose initially, and we're still using some of those parameters. So you see a lot of different capabilities here just on the brushes alone. And then let's go and explore a few more. We have some brushes here that are in the category of particles. Particle brushes, this is a panel that has multiple types of particle brushes. So there's one that you may have seen in other programs, and these are called bristle brushes. We've had these for quite a while. And so as you brush over that, it makes it look like you have a dry brush with long bristles or short bristles, and it makes you that bristled appearance. And you can use that quite nicely to take an existing photograph and then modify to make it look like it was painted with some dry oil or in short bristle brushes. And you can then perhaps add a filter to it, like a convolution filter for some embossing, and that will give it a little bit more depth as well. Right, so that's one way to use the bristle brushes, but there is a couple of others. You have particle brushes here, and I would invite you to look at the load option down there and to load a preset like Baddie Grass. Take a look at that. Okay, so what that does is it shoots particles that you could say you don't want the shading, so disable that, and it keeps it very bright. Or you do want the shading, and as the particles move down they get darker, so you can quite nicely and easily use that to make a tuft of grass, a field of greens, or whatever you want to call that, and then choose a different set of presets. I'll get Joshua Tree here and have that go up there, and then there's a few more. There's grass, there's garland, genie effects. Some of them are really wacky and spiky. That depends all on the angles that you set, the split angle here, right? So, and how long you want these particles to live, the lifespan, whether they are affected by gravity or not. So if you give it a strong gravity, they will fall down. They'll be attracted downwards by the gravity. So if you give it a little bit less, let's say 0.5, they won't go down quite that fast, right? And then in fact you can even give it negative gravity. This particle brush system we've had for quite a while. We've just added a new one. In version 7 there was a type of particle introduced called the orbitals, which is kind of an orbiting set of dots. So imagine a bunch of flies. You grab or bees. You grab a chunk of honey from their nest, and then they follow you around. And so they may be in a circular motion here. The brush size, you could go a little bit higher. So you see this entire swarm of bees, and that's basically following and tracking wherever you're going to paint. And as you do that, they leave a trail of honey, because they still have lots of pollen and honey on their own little legs. So you can use that to add some color bleed to it, or to reduce the color bleed. You can let's see, you can do the mix color. You could say, no, I don't want the mix color, do the color bleed though. And so you can give it a watery look, you can make it kind of blurry through it, a lot of different effects. And also, especially if you choose different layout, different organization of these hives, right, you can basically have them go into sort of rotating discs, as you see them here in the preview, or a little torus, or a square. So a lot of different ways to totally modify this picture in a somewhat seemingly unpredictable way. Another one that I'm very excited about, and you'll probably explore this and spend lots of hours on this one, is the new foliage system. Now the foliage system is a rules-based foliage system, so there's a rules library down here. And this is not for the this is perhaps not where you want to go and venture unless you really know your math, right? I mean, there is lots of rules you can set up. Each rule defines a portion of the life cycle of the twigs, the branches, the trunk, the flowers, the blossoms, and so on. And a lot of things can happen when they reach a certain event. They might split, they may branch, they may alternate, even odd, or they might just end. So there's a lot of parameters to include here, and it's not just in 2 dimensions. It's a full 3-dimensional tree system, a plant system that grows in 3 dimensions. So you've got gravity vectors x, y, and the z, velocity by which this moves, and so on. Let's not touch that initially. Let's just enjoy the presets. Click on load and look under load, and you'll see a lot of presets. So for instance, let's say we go down to some weeds. Let's have a look at weed number 1, right? And what you see is that it's growing this thing right out of your brush. So I'm going to erase this. In fact, I'm going to erase to white. Remember how we can do that? We can erase, we can right click here to white, and that will set the secondary color, or we can left click and set it to the color we want there, and then just drag and drop it over. Alright, so I'm going to right click here to white and erase to white, and then I'll take another one of the presets. Let's take the willow. There's a couple of willow categories. Let's take the last one. Alright, and whenever you draw with that, there's 2 phases to it. So you can draw and you can indicate which way you want to draw. Some of these trees or some of these plants will not listen to which way your mouse is moving or how fast it's moving, but some of them do, and you have some parameters you can use to adjust that. So you can do, for instance, let's say a stylish appearance here, right? So that's a little short bush or something, right? And then it's not always the same appearance, it's somewhat randomized, but you could have it follow the mouse a little bit more. So there are some parameters that allow you to do that. There's also the pen size. You can indicate how big they are initially, fog effects, and so on. So lots of things to explore. Let's see, perhaps one more. Let's go down here. I haven't seen all of these yet. Ligustrum, not sure what that is. Oh, that's just beautiful. Look at that. And then you'll notice there is a post-render phase also. So when you let it go, you have the cursor active still for another second or so. And that depends on the speed of your system. But you see it's doing some additional processing. Now you don't have to let it go all the way to the very end. If you want, you can stop, just let go of the mouse cursor, the mouse button a little bit earlier, and then so it will be a little bit sparser or dry, and won't even have time to grow the leaves on it. So lots of fun stuff to explore. Alright, let's do just one last one. I think there's a tree there somewhere, or tropical, simple tree. Let's see a simple tree. Alright, here's a simple tree, and grow it from the bottom to the top. And there you go. Just one brush stroke and you get an entire tree coming out of it. Let's do one more. Let's do shrub. Oh my goodness, look at that. So much twigs, so much fine branches going in there. And this is really what this is all about, is to very quickly give you a very realistic appearance on these trees and bushes and lots of other types of plants. Alright, quick start, getting started, an intro to Dogwaffle. This is PD Pro 8 Howler Edition, which has the animation menu here too. And it's the demo version, so you are certainly allowed to save the image you create up to a certain number of counts, I think up to 30 times. And then after that, we hope that you enjoyed it to a point where you just can't live without it, and you will want to buy the fully enabled version that will give you unlimited hours of saving and painting and exploring, animating, and we call that waffling and howling.